My name is Joan, and I've decided to tell you my life story. Well, my grandparents were Rachel and Jim Hood on my mama's side, and on my daddy's side, it was Robert Fleming Jesse and Mary Redmond. And the best thing I remember is Mommy told me some things about her life. And she said she had 2 kids who died, Grandma did, the same night with the measles. Both of them had the measles, and one of them took a backset on the measles and died, and then the other one died. So she lost 2 children in one night. And my grandfather died with a heart attack. And he was a preacher, and he also had a degree to teach. But one of them told me they wouldn't let him teach because he was affiliated with the wrong party. Grandma had a store. Well, she did pretty well for a while, but she started letting everybody have stuff on credit, and people wouldn't pay her, so she finally had to give up the store, and she lost it. And they lived up in the Wildcat, what we called the Wildcat. And my aunt said that it was a big farm, and said she would go to the spring, and around Christmas time, and the wind would blow down a tree. And it was the only tree on the farm that would blow down on Christmas like it was a bow unto Jesus. And then she would hear noises like, ooh. But anyway, then that's all I remember about up in there at the Wildcat. And Grandma rode a horse one time. She'd sell green beans. She'd raise green beans after Grandpa died, and she rode a horse, and she was on her trip to sell her beans, and the wind blew the horse down. But it didn't hurt her, and she got up and went home. And back then, little boys wore dresses. And I've seen pictures of some of the little boys that my uncles and things are wearing dresses when they was little babies. And so Grandma lived to be in her 90s, and she was a wonderful person. She stayed active all of her life. And then Daddy was a preacher. And he said he was walking down the mountain one day, and how he got saved, and some man met him and told him the Lord sent him out to pray for him. And he stopped him in the road, and the man prayed for him, and Daddy got saved. And then after that, Daddy became a preacher. Now, Daddy's daddy owned a sawmill, and it was, when he died, it went to all the brothers, and they all took turns of guarding it. And one night, all of them was sick, and none of them could guard it, and somebody burnt the sawmill down. And Daddy had made $100 a day himself in the sawmill, and the rest of them did too, I'm sure. And there went the livelihood of Daddy. But he still had an orchard back in the mountain, and he raised all kinds of fruits and sold them, and peddled, plus he farmed. And I know we had a horse and a cow. And I think he raised tobacco then. I loved Cliff Mountain, and it had a little old barn, and I was real tiny, and they put a big old plank going from the ground to the barn, and us kids would climb up the plank and get in the barn and jump out. And that was a lot of fun. Well, then one day, my brother, my oldest brother, I'll call him Bill, he went in the Army, and he saved up some money, and he bought us another place. And it was at Natural Tunnel State Park, near it. And so we moved down there. And I remember the first time we went, my brother, I'll call him Darrell, he drove a truck, and he was about 11 years old. Daddy had an old Model A or a Model T1, and he drove the truck. And I said, well, he's too little to drive. And my other brother, I'll call him Edgar, he said, well, boys are almost grown when they're 11 and 12. And so they let the boys drive, but they wouldn't let us girls do much. And so we moved to the new house. It was a brand new house. Daddy cut timber off of his own farm and hauled it down there and built a house himself with some help of his brothers and his boys. And it wasn't a fancy house, but it was new. And back then, we didn't have a bathroom inside. But up in the mountain, we didn't even have water inside. It came to the door, but it didn't go in. But down here, the water was pumped into the house from a spring way up on the mountain. And so we had water coming in the house. And when we first saw it, it scared us when we turned it on and water started gushing out. And the day we come, we unpacked everything and moved in our new house, and we liked it. And we kids, we went exploring. There's a big old oak tree in front of the yard, so we slid down it, and when I walked across a paved road, we was used to a gravel road, and went in the creek right across from us and swam. The boys swam, and us girls, Marlene was my sister, that was still home with me. We had a bunch of sisters, but the rest of them had gone and got married and moved away. So we dog paddled. And then we was keeping Ron, and he was my nephew, and my sister Lena, his mother, had moved to Illinois with another sister named Vern. And they got jobs up there, and Vern was married. And so Mommy was keeping Ron, and so we got used to Ron, and Mommy didn't want to give him up, so we just kept him. And then we got up out the creek and went across, climbed up to, saw a big railroad track behind us. So we went up on the railroad track. We walked down the track, and I'd never seen a railroad track before. And we walked along the rails, and I'd keep falling off, but my brothers, they could walk pretty well on it and keep their balance. And we walked all the way to a big old natural tunnel. That's where we were heading. But on our way, a train come behind us. And it scared me. I'd never seen a train before. When I looked back, it looked like a big old snake-like machine with smoke coming out the top of it. And anyway, we jumped off the tracks and stood beside the track and watched it go by. And when it barely got by, Darrell said, well, I'm going to jump up on that thing and be a hobo. And so he ran and caught the train and pulled himself up on it, and it scared the rest of us. We thought he was going to get killed. But he made it on the train, and then on down the track a little bit, he jumped off. And then we walked on to the tunnel, and it was the creek went all the way around the tunnel, so when we got close to the tunnel, we all jumped in the creek again and cooled off. And then we went in the tunnel, and we heard a big noise, and the train had done gone through, but it scared us, and we thought it might be a snake or a big old rat. But out of the train tunnel came a man. It's an old ragged-looking man. And Darrell said, well, that's a bum. And Darrell met him and said, what do you want? And he said, well, I was going to lead you all through the tunnel. And Darrell said, we've got enough of us to lead ourselves. We don't trust you. And he said, well, I trust you, and there's just one of me and a bunch of you all. So we let him lead us, played like he's leading us. And we went through the tunnel. It's a big old long tunnel. And then we got to the other end, we could walk up a trail and go to the top of it. And that was called Lover's Leap. And the bum told us the way it got to be Lover's Leap was that a long time ago, these two Indians fell in love with one another. The parents wouldn't let them marry, so they went to the top of the tunnel and jumped off to their death. And so we believed him. I don't know if it's so or not, but... And then we went through the top of the tunnel, come back down, walked back down the railroad track, and back to our house. Now they've changed the tunnel, and you can't walk down the railroad track and go in through the tunnel. And the bum came home with us. And I said, well, will Mommy let him stay? And Darrell said, sure. So they think he might be an angel unawares. And so when we got home, Mommy looked at the bum, and she didn't want to let him stay, but she did. And Daddy stayed there, and Daddy sat up with a shotgun all night to make sure the bum didn't do nothing to none of us. And the bum spent the night, and the next day, he got up and got ready to leave. And he asked me and Marlene to come with him. Mommy said, no, they can't go with you. And he said, well, I'll give them a rabbit if they'll go with me. Mommy told him, get on down the road. And so he went on down the road. And we never saw him no more. And there was a little store down the road from us. And we'd all walk to it and get stuff we needed through the week, what we didn't have. And a lot of times, and there was a water spring between our house and the store, and we'd get tired and we'd stop and get water out of that water spring and drink it by coupling our hands. And one time we saw a car sitting there, and when we got close to it, this old man jumped out and tried to get us in the car, but we outran him and ran on to the store. And every time I'd go to the store, that nice clerk would give me some free grapes. And he was a real nice man. Well, that's the episode of that. But then one time when we was going, we found a stray kitten. And I wanted to take it home with me. But Darryl said, well, Daddy won't let you keep that. And he looked at it and he said, well, it's a girl. Daddy don't keep girl cats. And so I took it home anyway. And Mommy, showed it to Mommy, and I said, can I keep this? And she said, well, I don't think your daddy will let you keep it because it's a girl, but you can keep it until it gets better. It looks sickly. And so I got to keep it for a few days. And while I was keeping it, it was doing okay, I guess. But one day we went out, we heard chickens making a noise, and we went out to a chicken house, and there was Ron throwing rocks at the chickens. And he killed a bunch of them. And I got on him. He was just like 2 or 3 years old. Me and Marlene got on him, and when I turned my back to see about one of the dead chickens, he picked up a rock and hit me in the neck with it. And it hurt, and Daddy heard us all hollering, and he came out there and he got Ron and spanked him. And poor little Ron, I felt sorry for him then. And they believed in spanking back then. And so then Ron quit bothering chickens, but he took his frustrations out on cats. So my little kitten got missing. I looked everywhere for it. And then one day I went to the outhouse. We didn't have a bathroom in the house yet. And I went to the outhouse and I was using it, and we used catalogs to wipe with back then. I know it sounds awful, but that's what we did. And newspapers. And I heard something meow. And getting up, I looked down in the toilet, and there was my little kitten down in the toilet. Ron had thrown it in the toilet. And I yelled and screamed for the rest of the family. And Mom and Darryl and Edgar and Marlene all came running, and Ron too. And Ron was sorry what he'd done. And Darryl had Edgar to go get a dipper, some cloth and strings and some other stuff, and clothespins, and he made a little cloth dipper big enough for the cat to climb in. And he tried to get the cat to climb in it when he stuck it down in the toilet hole, but the cat wouldn't. So he had Edgar to go back and get some bacon. And Edgar went back and got some bacon and put it in the dipper. And then when Darryl put it down in there, the kitten climbed on it, and the kitten got out. And Darryl went in the house, put shaving cream on, and Marlene put on Mommy's high heels. And when Daddy came home, he seen him and all that stuff, and he made him get it off. He said, wearing that stuff and trying to shave will make you grow a beard too soon, he told Darryl. And he told Marlene, your Mommy needs those heels to wear in church. She just has one pair and 1 or 2 good dresses. And so Marlene got out of the heels, and Darryl wiped off his face. And then we'd all went outside and we'd play. And they had some big old truck tires. And my brothers would put me in the tires and roll me down the hill. And I rolled down a hill and went past that oak tree and just kept going across the highway and landed in the creek. And I was scared to death I was going to drown. But I finally got out and pulled myself up out of the creek, and I just left the tire down there and I went back home. And Daddy and them got all over the boys for doing that. But now that's about all we had to play with. And we would play with, we had an old doll, and when it got old, we'd take its head and wrap it in some kind of tape and make us a ball, and we'd play ball. And then we had a tricycle, and we had a wagon, and we'd ride those. We'd ride them down a hill. And on this farm, the garden was way up the top of a mountain, and Daddy dug it out by hand with a shovel. And we'd walk all the way up there when the garden was ready and gather all the vegetables and carry them back down in big buckets. And it made us strong, too. And we had to hold the garden. And Daddy raised tobacco, too. And we all worked in the tobacco. I hated suckering. Ooh, it was messy. But I did it. And we made our money at the end of the year when Daddy sold his tobacco, and then we'd pay that store man what we owed him. And Daddy would swap them eggs, and sometimes they had hog meat, and he'd swap hog meat for other stuff he needed. And we had a cow, we got our milk there and our butter. And we had a horse, and he done the plowing. And then Daddy bought a plow later on. And then finally, and years later, he bought a tractor. Now, that's the first part of my story. I'll tell you some more next time.